My name is Dan Davidson. I'd like to demonstrate an app I designed called, appropriately enough, Nuts and Bolts, with the idea that it would help me as an around-the-house handyman and, when I need to be, a shade tree mechanic. On opening the app, you see the image of a bolt with a hexagonal design superimposed on it. Right below that's a slider. Moving that back and forth increases and decreases the size of the image in steps, matching available wrench or drill sizes in inches and, when appropriate, in millimeters. Steps from 1/16 of an inch to 1 inch can be determined. Buttons with the small and large wrench head icons allow me to enlarge or reduce the image size by 1 wrench size. Since the shape and resolution of cell phones vary, before this app can be used to predict a size accurately, it must be calibrated. When you press the yellow calibrate button, a little window pops up giving you some instructions. Click OK, and a second slider emerges. This is the calibration slider. This also lets you change the size of the nut and bolt proportionally as you slide the calibrator. Now the idea here is to measure exactly an inch so it fits right inside the red hexagon. When you have it as closely as possible, you hit the yellow calibrate button. Another window pops up saying, should I save this new calibration? Click OK. Let me start by trying to determine the size of this wheel luck nut from my car. So I set this as closely as possible to the center of the red hexagon. Now, it may appear to you that it's a little bit off because the camera may not be absolutely lined up with my cell phone, and it'll be a little parallax, but trust me, I have it centered. So now I go back and forth until I find, and I can use the fine tuners, until I find the size where the total nut covers the red part of the hexagon and you can see the blue edges. At this point, it tells me that that lug nut should be 3/4 of an inch. Let's try it. So I rummage around and find my 3/4 inch wrench, which is right here. Let me drop that bolt in there, and I see that that bolt fits very well. Let me try this measurement again with a smaller nut. So as much as I can, I will place it exactly at the center of that red hexagon. Then I'll use the slider to go down, and then maybe use the wrenches to check. No, I see it's at a half. I still can see red. Let me adjust it a little better. It looks like it's going to exactly fit at 7/16 of an inch. Again, let's test it. I whip out my 7/16 of an inch wrench, take the nut, try it, and sure enough, it fits. Let me put it down here so you can see. It fits exactly inside the wrench. I'm going to cancel that. But you also see from the strip at the top that in addition to a 7/16 inch wrench, an 11 millimeter should also work. Well, how about that? Here's my 11 millimeter wrench. Let me put the nut inside that, and you can see that the nut fits. Now let's try something else. I have a lag bolt here, but now what I'd like to do is measure the width of the screw part itself. So what I'm going to do is lay that as closely as possible in the center of the bolt over the bolt image. I move the slider back and forth until the image of the bolt is just obscured by the bolt itself. That means that if I choose a drill that's that size, it's going to be a tiny bit smaller than the nut, so I can use a wrench or a socket wrench to run that in. However, if I just make that a little bit bigger, so you can see the threads outside of the bolt itself, that means the bolt will go right into the hole, and then you just have to tighten it up with a nut. Finally, I'd like to show you a couple of little tricks. One is that, of course, you know that the surface is going to be quite slippery. So if you have a nut or bolt placed on the foam and it's not exactly level, then the bolt might slide around. So what I just did here was put a rubber band around the cell phone so that it gives the nut just a little bit of tension. That way, if I move the phone, the nut doesn't move. With a bolt, it may pay to use 2 rubber bands because that would be more stability, and then pinching those 2 together, you can center the bolt, and that would hold that. Well, that's about it. I hope you find this little demonstration useful, and even more, I hope you can find a use for this app. Thanks for listening.